Now, many times I've seen in the comments of my mini PC reviews, a lot of you asking for a small form factor PC with a dedicated GPU, something with a bit of 3D power there in the GPU department. And here it is. This was sent out to me. It's from a company called Bluejure. It's their Move 2. It is a mobile workstation they market it as, and you can see small form factor PC. Really nice size to it, and it is powered by a Core i7. It's the 9750H set with a higher power limit, and it is in an Intel NUC Extremes. This is my first time reviewing one of these, and it's basically a PCIe card that slots into this, and then we have the GPU with this model as well, which is a GeForce RTX 3060 with 12 gigabytes of RAM. Other specs include, with this configuration, is 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM that is clocked at 3.2 gigahertz. We have a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. It's got Thunderbolt 3 support, 2 ports of that, dual gigabit LAN, and let's take a look at this in detail to see if this small factor here is worth it, the power that's packed into such a nice small case here. This is what you'll find inside the box of the Move 2. We have a quick start guide in various different European languages, HDMI cable, and our power cable. Bluejure sent me the Move 2 here in their Rogue Passion color, which I really do like. It's a vibrant red. It's made all out of metal, and we have this unique design on the sides of it and the top. Now, this unique cutout pattern on the side here, this is not just for aesthetics, it's also for cooling that powerful RTX 3060. Just for reference, I've got it next to my Nintendo Switch Lite here, and as you can see, it is a small factor PC, small enough that you could place this in a large backpack and transport around this portable workstation. Now, getting access to the internals is a little tricky. There are what I thought were rivets that hold it to either side, and it turns out they were our T6 Torx screw, and that outer case then just slides off, and you do have to remove the bottom to make it a little bit easier. So you can see here we've got our dedicated GPU, which is the Asus Dual GeForce. This is the RTX 3060. Now, you can get a 3060 Ti model, but it has less RAM. This particular model here has the 12 gigabytes of dedicated RAM, which is probably good for those that do a lot of rendering and things like that in 4K. And it does have the HDMI 2.1 support with this one. I'll get onto the port soon. So that's our power supply, which is 500 watts down below. The cable management here is pretty good. And this is an 8-inch card, so it's very hard to fit anything. In fact, you can't really fit larger cards at all in this. And this is that Intel NUC compute unit, which is the Core i7, the 9750H that's in this. And later on, you would actually be able to swap this out for the 11th Gen 1. It slots in via PCIe slot here. So there's 2 PCIe slots, one's for the GPU, one's for the compute unit right here. And this is the FSP power supply, 500 watts, as mentioned before. Nice little compact size. And at the top here, we've got 2 80mm low profile fans. And there's a bit of air. So the hot air is coming out of the compute unit at the top there, and then it's being blown out. And they're not too bad. And I'll get onto the fan noise too with this particular mini PC. You can see at the top here, there are the 2 wireless antenna connectors that connect to the back right here. So it does use a standard power supply plug connector. The tiny little PSU fan in here, you barely ever hear it, but it's there if it is needed to cool it down. And right here with the Intel NUC, this is the Extreme 9 compute unit, we do have 4 USB 3.1 Gen 2 ports on here, HDMI 2.0, 2 Thunderbolt 3s, and audio out 3.5mm, and 2 gigabit LAN ports right there. And then on the RTX 3060 side of things, we have 3 DisplayPort 1.4As and an HDMI 2.1 port. These are our 2 antennas. Power button right here does have a status LED within it. So it is possible to upgrade the Intel NUC Extreme that is in here. That's that PCIe card that's slotted in place. You can remove the plastic cover on this, and you can swap and change out the RAM, the SSD, but it's a little bit difficult to get to. So you will have to remove a few screws, and you're probably going to have to take out the GPU right here in order to gain access to that. So you'll be able to upgrade just those components there. And of course, you can swap it out later on for an 11th gen Extreme NUC unit if you wanted to do so. Then the top of it, we've got that same unique design here, all made out of metal, really good finish to it. There is a dust filter just below that, you can just see in there, and that is for those two 80mm low profile cooling fans. Onto our BIOS here. So because this is an Intel NUC Extreme unit, we do have, of course, their BIOS, and it is very good. There are a lot of options in here that you can tweak. Now, we'll not go over all of them. What I'll do is just briefly show you. So under the Advanced tab here, there's a lot of things we can tweak: storage, onboard devices, USB, video, add-in configuration. That can all be done there, so you can go through that, tweak and adjust all those different things there. Now, under cooling, you're able to adjust this. So if you were not happy with the way it's set up out of the factory, then you can change this mode here. So you can see that the primary fan control mode there is on cool. You go and adjust that and say, you know, I don't actually want it on cool. I want it on quiet or custom. You can go and tweak all of that. The fan off temperature too, which you're able to tweak and set that. So that is really good. We've got a lot of customization, a lot of control here with this. Now, if I get out of this, just go into the performance here, see how this is configured. So we've only got two options to select, and that's the processor and hyper-threading and things you can tweak and adjust there, but it will be set to the 45 watts, this being a mobile processor that is within this. And our memory there, there's a few little things here that we can tweak, but I don't know whether memory profiles it's going to allow us. Okay, so if it did have some XMP RAM in this, we could go ahead and then change that to the XMP profiles to tweak that performance. But right now, no, I can't do that. So there's nothing really there that I can change and tweak. Security and power, that's there. So power options, maximum performance enabled. Power limits, we can adjust those. So I'm going to just leave it here as default, okay? So the higher we set, the temperatures will rise, but it will allow us to hold higher turbos. But I'm going to keep it all factory options there. And let's jump into Windows now. So it is Intel, as I mentioned at the start, that is powering this. It's the Core i7, the 9750H. It is essentially a laptop processor that they have in this PCI card. That's the NUC compute unit that you can slot into this. Now, if you want the up-to-date 11th gen, I don't think it's still actually out yet. Otherwise, we'd probably have this in here instead. But if you wait a little bit, you should be able to order that one soon and then you'll be up to date, because 9th gen now, of course, is dated. So it does have 6 cores, 12 threads, maximum turbo is 4.5 gigahertz, and the power limit set in the BIOS there is actually different from stock. So stock it would be 45, and they've set a lot higher there, so the performance is going to be actually better than laptops out there that have this particular chipset. And then the graphics card, so the GeForce RTX 3060. What's interesting to note with this one, that we do have 12 gigabytes of that DDR6 RAM. Now, not even my RTX 3080 has 12 gigabytes. It's got 10, as this has a lot. And it doesn't really make sense because this is the lowest end of the RTX 3000 series cards. Having more RAM than the RTX 3080 doesn't compute there, does it? It's really silly. However, if you want better performance, then you can get to this model. You can order it from them too as well to have the 3060 Ti. However, you do need to sacrifice on 4 gigabytes of RAM because this one has 8, whereas the current card I have, even though it is a lower performance, does have the 12 there. And then the internal storage, so it's running here a Seagate via CUDA 1 terabyte. Very good speeds, not a problem with that for PCI 3.0 spec. NVMe drive, that is good. And then taking a look at our device manager, I just wanted to point out a couple of things here. So the network, when you take a look at that, network adapters, so both of the gigabit LAN ports on there, they are Intel ones, and very good Wi-Fi cards. So the Wi-Fi 6, the AX200, and I do see around 1.2 to 1.3 gigabits in transfers, good signal strength, and really no issues with that at all. Onto our benchmarks now. So Cinebench R15, this score here is over 7,000. Isn't actually too bad for the 9750H. Because of that increased power limit, we're running 20 watts more than normal. Most laptops would have this set at 45 watts. We're running 65 watts here. So the score for the chipset, not bad. Now, if we had an 11th gen in this, it would have the 8 cores, 16 threads, and this would be probably around about 10,000, 11,000 points there. So hopefully they can add that to their lineup soon. The 11th gen offering there from the NUC Intel Extreme units. So here with PC Mark, 3D Mark here, sorry, with Firestrike, I actually ran a little bit of an overclock on the card, just using Firestrike. And you can see I got 10 10,000 and almost 200 points there, which for an RTX 3060 is, yeah, that's okay. It's actually not too bad there. Here is the stock score for Firestrike Extreme. The score again is okay. I mean, if you got the 3060 Ti, then this would be a lot quicker here. Better performance from that card, of course. And TimeSpy. So TimeSpy getting over 8,000 points here is okay. And it's nothing amazing. And remember, there's a limitation with the size of this particular mini PC here that we cannot put anything over 200 millimeters or 8 inches is the maximum card length. So that restricts us really to these smaller models here. And here we do have now PC Mark 10. And this score here, 5,000. Okay, but let down a little bit by the CPU, the fact that it's only got the 6 cores, not like the 8-core ones that would have a score that would be a lot better than this, of course. But still respectable, still a very good score. I mean, this is a very fast system in use, and I do find it very, very quick. And here we have a single core score here with Geekbench 5. Now, if this was the 11th gen, this would be about 1400 instead of 1100. Multi-core score here for a 6-core chip because of that 65-watt power limit, and the shorter boost one that they've increased as well isn't too bad there either. So that is good in terms of benchmarks for what this is. And before we get on to a little bit of gaming performance, I wanted to talk about the wattage. So this is what I'm seeing here, that at idle, it is around 26 watts. Now, they don't have the integrated graphics enabled on this. So the Intel UHD is disabled. So we're only just running that dedicated GPU. Now, the CPU just under load, this is running Cinebench, will hit and peak at 126 watts. CPU gaming and the GPU loaded up will be around about 280 watts there. So we're well within what that power supply supplies, which is 500 watts. It's an 80 plus platinum that they do have there for our power supply in this one. And then the thermals. So I've been monitoring that the whole entire time, and you've probably seen straight away that, oh, hang on, we've got a few things in the red here. And that is from the Nook Extreme here. Core i7 does peak at 101 degrees Celsius. So yes, that triggers thermal throttling. And why is it getting so hot? That is because, again, we are running a much higher power limit here and stressing the cooling out a little bit. So it does get a little bit toasty, definitely that CPU. On the GPU side of things, though, I normally see temperatures in the mid-60s. And let's take a look at what it was getting up to. The RTX, well, there we go. Sorry, mid-70s is what I wanted to say. So 74 there, which isn't bad. And on 12 fan noise, so it will peak around 48 to 49 decibels. It sounds similar to a gaming laptop when under load. Now, most of the noise, in fact, the bulk of it, is all coming from the Core i7's cooler, not the GPU. That Asus GPU is very quiet. I barely hear it. So here is a sample now of the CPU fan under full load, so you get an idea of the noise. Now, it's about 49 decibels. Bluejur does market the Move 2 as a mobile workstation. So video editing is something that you would probably want to be doing on a system like this. I mean, you've got ample amount of RAM there with that GPU, 12 gigabytes. It's kind of crazy, really, for an RTX 3060 to have this. So with Adobe Premiere Pro here, the timeline, I'll just quickly play back this, in case someone at a quarter resolution is fine. At half, fine, I don't see any drop frames, and full here. This is 4K 100 megabit footage, and it does handle that really well without any problems. So what I will do now is test out that export time here. Now, because it does have the integrated graphics disabled, we cannot benefit from Intel's QuickSync with this one. It's going to be just the CUDA cores and then the CPU here. So it will be hardware encoding, and the format here, well, this is going to be set here to H.264. And it is going to be, like I always test, the YouTube 4K preset here and 1 minute of footage. We'll see how long it takes. And there we go. So that is about 1 minute and 29 seconds. Because it does not use the integrated graphics with the QuickSync there, we are losing out on encoding performance here. Export times are a little bit longer because this should really be under a minute if we did have the UHD graphics enabled. And just how well does the RTX 3060 with the 12 gigabytes of RAM game here? So I'm going to test it out, the gaming performance in 1080p, because I believe most people with this particular GPU won't be gaming at 1440p, and definitely not 4K, because it's just, I think, going to be too demanding, especially for the RTX 3060, which is low end of the 3000 series. So this game here is Shadow of the Tomb Raider on the highest settings preset. I'm going to run now the in-game benchmark, and we'll take a look at the average frames per second that it's able to achieve. And a result here of 108 average frames per second for an RTX 3060. That's fine there. So for 1080p gaming with this title, perfectly fine. If you step it up to 1440p or 4K, it takes a huge toll on that frame rate. Another in-game benchmark, this one is Far Cry 5. I have it set to the high settings preset. Let's see how it performs. And that finished up with an average of 120 frames per second. Cyberpunk 2077 right here. Now I've got it on the medium settings, medium ray tracing, and the DLSS is on auto. So if that was off, I would not be getting 60 frames per second. And it seems to be most of the time that it will always be running around 60 frames per second with these current settings. So that is good. Even in a firefight, it is still going to perform well. Oh, and it looks like I'm almost dead. I'm really low on health here. But the main thing is over 60 frames per second, and if you're not happy with this frame rate on medium, then I would lower it down to low settings and perhaps tweak the DLSS to a setting that you're happy with there. So I really like the case this one has, the small form factor PC. So this one, yes, you could actually put it in a large backpack and move it around. They do market it as a mobile workstation. So plenty of video RAM on this one, 12 gigabytes. That's even more than my RTX 3080 with this RTX 3060. And as I showed you, it does have enough power there for 3D applications, and it gets reasonable kind of performance there. You can even play a demanding game like Cyberpunk 1080p medium settings and get over 60 frames per second with DLSS on, of course. Now the fan noise on this one isn't too bad. Under idle, it is very quiet. When it is under load, and especially when you're pushing that CPU very hard with, say, 3D rendering and things, it will peak and hit 100 degrees Celsius. You hear the fan a little bit, and it sounds very similar to that of, say, a gaming PC, or should I say a gaming laptop, sorry. So gaming laptop chip is what is really in this, but with a higher power limit. Now this is the first time I have tested out and reviewed the Intel NUC Extreme, which is basically a PCIe card with all the components in it, the chipset in it, and you can slot it in. You can upgrade it by opening it, but one of the cons is it's very difficult to actually get in there, pull it out, and upgrade it. You can add up to 64 gigabytes of RAM, you can swap out the SSD, but really, if you're going to be buying one of these, you should really get that RAM in the configuration you want to start with, because it's a little complicated to get all the components out and to be able to upgrade it. So I really do like the small little 500 watt PSU that's in this. It's great, and it wasn't under any stress or anything, because it only really maximum when pushing this very hard was about 300 watts of usage. Idle, about 26 watts that you can get out of this. So the other thing about this particular model here too as well, that it's 9th gen. So yes, it's dated now, because we do have 11th gen now, and it's just coming out around about now, the 11th gen Core i9 NUC Extreme from Intel, which is the same form factor, the same exact thing, but you'll have PCIe 4 support. You will then also have much quicker chips with 8 cores, 16 threads, 5 gigahertz turbo, probably about double the CPU performance of this one, double the compute performance, and you get Thunderbolt 4 support with it as well. So great that this does have Thunderbolt 3. So I might recommend actually holding off and waiting for the 11th gen model of this when it comes out. Now the RTX 3060, you can go for the RTX 3060 Ti model if you wanted to. It is a little bit more expensive, and you only get the 8 gigabytes of RAM with that one, not the 12 that this has. Now the configuration here that I was sent with the 1 terabyte NVMe drive, the 16 gigabytes of RAM, Windows 10 Pro, and the Core i7 and the RTX 3060 is going to set you back 2,190 euros. So yes, it is expensive. I know PC hardware is expensive, the graphics cards and everything, but considering the fact that it's 9th gen, I think it is just a little bit overpriced there for what you are really getting here. So all up, I think it's a very, very decent mini PC, or should I say small form factor PC, but it does have those cons of hitting 100 degrees, it's 9th gen, and if they can use the 11th gen in this for future models, and hopefully it's got better thermals, then it's going to be a great small form factor PC. If that's what you're after, something that's portable like this, and the case design of this one, I really, really do like it. It is an awesome looking small form factor PC. So there we go, that's the Move 2. Thank you so much for watching my in-depth review of it.